All right, for the final question this evening, I'd like to ask Mr. LaRouche the crux of what people have to get, and I think you just illustrated a lot of it, this much bigger fight internationally. But to come to the theme of the beginning of the webcast, that yesterday was the 80th anniversary of the introduction of the Glass-Steagall bill in the House of Representatives, which ended up passing. The vote was 263 to 19. This was the people. It was not a party system. This was the voice of the people. Really, what is it that people need to get? Is it the fact that they don't understand this history, or is it the fact that they're not taking responsibility for the nation? Because I think that what separates you from most other political figures is that you take responsibility for the nation. You're not looking at the state that you live in. You're not looking at the research that you've been given, looking over it. You take responsibility for that. And when you meet with people in the state legislatures, there are people who want to step forward. And as we said, they want to break from being the prison guard of their own population to, as you're saying, develop the nation. And Glass-Steagall really as being, as it was for Roosevelt, and here we are 80 years later, just the first step. It's regaining sovereignty. And this sovereign control of the banking system is simply the necessity to have then this credit lending system, credit lending institution, and making the economy a financial system which is simply a reflection of future growth, future payment system, and making good on what you're going to do, and accounting for it with an economy. Now, how do we get people, this army of patriots that we want to try to create, pulling out of the different levels, the city councils, the state legislatures? Is it the lack of knowledge that that the upward development of an economy is the real history of how the principle of life and man should develop, or a lack of knowledge of our own history, or is it really a lack of just taking responsibility for the nation and the consequences that then puts into someone to say we're going to get it done regardless of ideologies?
But there's not really much mystery in this. There's a desire to avoid certain subject matters, and that's where the problems come into play. We've gone through all this before. The mankind's intention, our proper intention, is to increase our power. We call it changing our culture, a progressive development of what the human mind is capable of doing, which leads to abilities of mankind to do things. For example, now, what's before us? We've got a solar system, which has a couple things in it which we are interested in. But we think about this like there's rocks moving around through empty space, that kind of approach, which is nonsense. And mankind is still using that kind of rocks rolling around in empty space. This is something which is a peculiarity of the human sense perceptual apparatus, that we divide phenomena according to what our biological system of sense perception suggests to us. And then we get a little bit smarter and realize that was stupid, and we find a better way. We say these are no longer this is actually explainable in this form, and we can find that we can do it. And so we abandon the witch doctor's advice, and we go to more civilized layers, and that's essentially what happens. Now, the key thing here is, how do we maintain? Let's take the fact of space. We're not going to be on Mars, as I've known a number of times. We're not going to be there in this century. And it's not because we're lazy, because it's not ready for it, because we have not made the kinds of steps that we could actually assure putting human beings on Mars. No one has come up with a means to solve some of the key problems that make the difference between the conditions of life of human-like beings, or something like that, from Earth to Mars. And it probably can be solved. But you're going to have to do a few steps of work to find out step by step how you can do that. So the nature of mankind, however, is, unlike the animal, is to make those steps of progress, of going into creating new cultures, new ways of behavior, new ways of understanding things, which enable mankind to be more productive, to be more powerful in terms of the ability to survive and to accomplish missions, all these things. If you have a policy of going backward, like the green policy, the green policy is a policy of mass murder. Now, your greenie pothead may not actually seem to be an enemy, but he's rather stupid, not because he doesn't think, but because he has habits which he enjoys, and these habits prevent him from doing anything useful or sane. And so the problem here is that mankind his education and development must be based on what are the factors which, then there's evidence for how to look at this thing. What are the factors that we must consider in turning the evolution of mankind into a higher form? The point is that mankind is the only species which has the voluntary ability to change its own policy without actually changing its own internal biological apparatus, but simply raising it to a higher level. And what's happened now, as the green policy says, the green policy, if it's allowed to continue, will destroy the human species. First, it will result in mass murder. The green policy is already, genocide on a large scale is already happening in places like the United States itself. And it's because we tolerate it, because we tolerate the green policy. The green policy is the enemy of humanity. So that stupidity and evil sometimes go quite together. Sometimes a stupid man can be more evil because he has no conscience than the other. So the issue is that. The issue is we have to understand that mankind is a species, a unique species. We will, if we survive, we will change the solar system, or we will change parts of it. We will make changes in the immediate future. We will make more significant changes later. All that is before us. It's our nature. It's what we must do. We must also gently increase the intellectual power of our citizens. This is not something arbitrary. This is something, it's a systematic thing. If you just teach people through discoveries, physical discoveries, discoveries of universal principle, by introducing those factors into the habitat behavior of human beings, the human species improves. It has the effect of evolving into a higher state of existence. Our objective should be that. And I believe that only positive orientations will have that benefit. You've got to say, what is it that is good, which we're missing out on, and which our negligence could cause us to destroy ourselves? Like it's a guy, like the reckless driver in the automobile accident. Right? You've got to wake up, buddy, and don't keep doing those same old accidents all the time. And that's the point. We do not have in society today a general leadership, especially we are better off in the United States in many respects than others are. But we no longer have achieved or desired to achieve as a nation, to achieve the process of true creativity, of mankind's ability to evolve to, in effect, a higher species by making fundamental discoveries of principle, bringing those discoveries of principle into play, and mankind thus voluntarily changes mankind to a higher species. And when we abandon that and try to adapt to old habits just to change your style, you're actually destroying humanity.
Well, Lynn, unlike the thoughts of the British royals, that sounds like a very noble ambition. This has been a very exciting week. I think we've got our marching orders laid out. As Leandra pointed out, it was 80 years ago, 1 month from Glass-Steagall's introduction to its passage. Maybe we can outdo that record. So I'd like to thank you for watching. Thank Lynn very much for being with us. Thank Leandra and Michael. And we'll see you next week.